He woke up to shattering glass. 3 men in homeowner association uniforms were already inside. "Get the safe," one of them snarled. But they had no idea his security system was connected to Homeland Security. What happened next? Even the FBI was not ready for it. But let us start from the beginning. When the sound of breaking glass startled me awake, my eyes shot open, heart beating so hard it felt like my chest might burst. For a few seconds, I was frozen in that blurry state between sleep and waking, and sure if I had imagined the noise or if it was real, then I heard it again. The sharp crunch of glass underfoot. That sound of something breaking, intentional and harsh, sent a surge of adrenaline through my veins. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, nearly dropping it to the floor. In my fear, my hand was shaking as I unlocked it and pulled up the security app. My home was equipped with an advanced security system, motion detectors, cameras in every room, even infrared sensors. All of it linked directly to my phone. But as I watched the live feed, my blood turned to ice. 3 men in dark uniforms were moving through my living room. Their faces were partially hidden by black balaclavas. But what chilled me to the core were the white letters printed across their jackets. Home Owner Association. Home Owner Association. I sat up trying to make sense of it. Why would homeowner association officers be in my house at this hour? But then I heard their voices, cold and clear, and all doubts evaporated. Get the safe. He has got to have cash somewhere. This guy thinks he is smarter than the homeowner association. He is about to learn. A wave of fear and confusion washed over me. This was not some routine homeowner association check about a noise complaint or unapproved exterior paint. This was a home break-in, and worse, it was targeted. They knew I had a safe. They knew where it was. This was not random. I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could, my heart pounding in my chest. My mind raced. Calling the police seemed pointless. By the time they arrived, these guys would already be gone. And judging by their calm, skilled movements, this was not their first time breaking into someone's house. I crouched down and moved toward the hallway closet my dad had left me. A shotgun when he passed away. A 12-gauge Remington. I had never used it before, but I knew how to load it. My fingers struggled with the shells. As I pushed them into the chamber, my breath quick and shaky. But then I remembered the security system. 3 years ago, I had been involved in a harassment incident. Some unstable guy from my old job had followed me home one night. After that, Homeland Security had insisted on upgrading my home security system. The contract tied my system directly to their response network. If an intruder tripped the alarm, Homeland Security would be notified automatically, and they would not waste time. Had the alarm been triggered? My phone screen lit up. Breach detected. Homeland Security notified. A small pulse of comfort steadied my hand. Help was on the way, but that also meant I had to survive long enough for them to get here. I could hear them moving down the hallway now. The thump of boots on hardwood. One of them was humming to himself. The relaxed nature of it all made my stomach turn. You see the cameras? Yeah, he knows we are here. One of them laughed. I crept toward the hallway, gun raised. My back was pressed against the wall as I listened to them approaching. My finger rested on the trigger. You are trespassing, I shouted. My voice broke from the adrenaline, but it was loud enough to echo down the hall. The men stopped. You think we care about that? One of them said, his voice full of mockery. He stepped into view, a tall man with broad shoulders. He carried a crowbar, and the shine of metal under the dim light made my blood run cold. Homeowner Association makes the rules around here. I steadied my breath and aimed. Before I could fire, the sound of helicopter blades thudded through the air. A booming roar followed the unmistakable sound of vehicles pulling up outside. Federal agents, drop your weapons. The man's eyes widened as red and blue lights lit up the room. Then the front door exploded inward, nearly coming off the hinges. Armed in tactical gear stormed into the house, rifles raised on the ground. Now, the intruders spun around, rushing. One of them lunged toward the back door, but 2 agents tackled him to the floor. The one with the crowbar dropped it and raised his hands, his face contorted with shock. Within seconds they were on the ground, handcuffed. I lowered the shotgun, breathless. My legs felt like they might give out. Beneath me, an agent approached, dressed in black tactical gear, with a Homeland Security patch on his shoulder. He lifted his visor. "Mr. Carter?" I nodded. "You are safe now." I sank onto the floor, the shotgun resting across my knees. My heart was still racing. The agents were already leading the intruders out the front door. One of them, the tall guy with the crowbar, turned his head as they passed me. His eyes were cold and steady. "This is not over," he growled. I did not flinch. A female agent knelt beside me. "Mr. Carter, are you aware that these men are part of an organized crime ring connected to homeowner association scams across the state?" I shook my head, still trying to breathe. "They have been targeting homeowners, forcing them for money. Looks like you were next on the list." My mouth was dry. "Why? You were behind on some home owner association payments, right?" I let out a weak laugh. $100. "That is how it starts," the agent said grimly. "Small penalties, then bigger ones, then threats." I wiped my hand down my face. "So what happens to them now?" "They will be charged with burglary, extortion and racketeering, for starters." I breathed slowly. My eyes wandered to the front door, now hanging on one hinge. A cold breeze flowed into the house. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" the agent asked. I nodded, but I was not going anywhere. Let the homeowner association come after me again, I would be ready. I sat in the back of an ambulance, watching through the fogged glass as the homeowner association officers were dragged out of my house in handcuffs. My hands were still shaking, and the adrenaline was beginning to wear off, leaving behind a deep pit in my chest. My house was a wreck, with broken glass everywhere, furniture overturned, my front door hanging off one hinge. But none of that mattered compared to the burning rage growing inside me. Greg Henshaw, the lead officer, was the last one escorted out. He was a big guy with a buzz cut and a permanent frown etched across his face, despite the zip ties around his wrists and the Homeland Security agents swarming the scene. He still carried himself with a proud arrogance, like he was in control. He turned his head toward me as they shoved him into the back of a police cruiser. "You are going to regret this," he growled, his eyes narrowing dangerously. "Homeowner association always wins." My jaw tightened so hard it hurt. An agent, a tall man with a graying beard, approached me. He wore a Homeland Security vest over tactical gear, and his face was lined with the kind of tiredness that only comes from years of seeing the worst in people. "Mr. Carter," he said, flipping through a small notebook, "I need to ask you a few questions." I nodded. My mouth was dry and my pulse was still racing. "Do you know why they targeted you?" "Because I owed them money," said, my voice harsher than I intended. $100 in homeowner association fees. The agent frowned. "It is more than that. These men are part of a criminal network that has been operating under the cover of homeowner association regulations for years. They have been targeting homeowners, extorting them for money. Small penalties that quickly escalate into threats and intimidation. In some cases, it goes further." "Further? How?" The agent expression darkened. "Home invasions, property destruction, even violence." My stomach twisted, and no one stopped them. The agent sighed. "Homeowner associations have a lot of legal gray areas. They operate as private organizations with their own internal rules. That gives them a lot of freedom to bend or break the law." My hands curled into fists. "So they have been getting away with this until now," the agent said. I glanced toward the squad cars where the officers were being loaded in. Greg Henshaw was sitting in the back of one of them, his eyes locked on me, his lips twisted into a slow, taunting smile. I could feel the rage rushing through my veins. My house was destroyed. My privacy was invaded. These men had walked into my home in the middle of the night with the intent to rob me, maybe worse, and they were acting like they were the victims. "They are not going to get away with this," I said, my voice low and sharp. The agent nodded. "We have enough evidence to put them away for a long time. Burglary, extortion, racketeering. That is just the beginning." But I caught the pause in his voice. "But what?" "Homeowner association cases tend to get complicated. Their lawyers are aggressive. They will push back hard. There is a chance some of these charges might not hold. I sat up straighter. You are saying they could walk? It is possible. A cold rage settled in my chest. Not if I have anything to say about it. The agent's eyes focused. What are you planning to do? I shook my head. I am not letting this slide. They broke into my house. They threatened me. They cannot just walk away because of legal loopholes. The agent's gaze stayed on me for a long moment. Be careful, Mr. Carter. These guys are dangerous. Yeah, I said, my voice hard. So am I. 2 days later, I sat across from my lawyer, Sarah Cole, in her modern downtown office. Sarah was sharp and ruthless, the kind of attorney who made judges nervous. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail, and her tailored suit made her look like she belonged in a courtroom, not a glass-walled office. They broke into your house, she said, flipping through a stack of papers. We have audio recordings, security footage, and eyewitness testimony. That is more than enough for a conviction. That is not enough, I said. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Excuse me, I want them destroyed. My voice was ice cold. I want them in prison for the rest of their lives. I want their homeowner association license revoked. I want them to lose everything. Sarah's eyes gleamed. Good. I was hoping you would say that. She slid a folder across the table. We are filing charges for armed robbery, home invasion, conspiracy, and extortion. That alone could get them 20 years. But I have also dug into their homeowner association records. Turns out they have been embezzling money from the homeowner association fund for years. That opens the door to federal fraud charges. How long would that add? Another 20 years, minimum. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Perfect. Sarah studied me for a moment. You are sure about this? You are not worried about retaliation? They already retaliated. I said this time it is my turn. The trial began 2 weeks later. Greg Henshaw and the other officers sat in the defendant's box wearing dark suits and carefully neutral expressions. Greg had shaved his head and his eyes were cold and flat. The prosecutor laid out the case carefully. The illegal fines, the threats, the break-in, the security footage. Every damaging piece of evidence was shown to the jury. The security camera footage was the nail in the coffin, the moment when Greg's face was clearly visible as he ordered his men to get the safe. Greg's lawyer tried to argue that it was a confusion. They believed they were enforcing homeowner association rules, he said calmly. Mr. Carter had a history of unpaid fines and non-compliance. The prosecutor leaned forward. So homeowner association rules include breaking and entering, assault, threats. Greg's lawyer paused. Greg's expression never changed. He sat there stone-faced, like this was all beneath him. Finally, Greg took the stand. He smiled slightly as he adjusted the microphone. We were doing our jobs, he said. Homeowners need to understand that rules exist for a reason. If people think they can ignore homeowner association regulations, there have to be results. My hands curled into fists beneath the table. The prosecutor's smile was sharp. So you are saying breaking and entering was justified? Greg's smile disappeared. He opened his mouth, but the prosecutor cut him off. Because last time I checked, armed robbery is not listed in the homeowner association bylaws. Greg's mouth snapped shut. The jury whispered among themselves. I watched as Greg's shoulders tensed, his arrogance slipping away. I smiled. Good. After the court adjourned, Greg was escorted out by 2 guards. He locked eyes with me as he passed, his expression a mix of rage and shame. This is not over, he said under his breath. I smiled lightly. Yeah, it is. 2 days later, Sarah called me. It is done, she said. Guilty on all counts. He is going away for a long time. How long? 25 years, minimum. I leaned back, the tension finally releasing from my chest. Good, I said. Greg Henshaw thought he ran the neighborhood. Now, he would be lucky if he got to see the outside of a prison cell ever again. The courtroom was cold. It was not the temperature, it was the atmosphere. The walls were a pale, washed-out gray, and the fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly. The air smelled like old paper and stale coffee. But none of that mattered. All I could focus on was Greg Henshaw sitting at the defendant's table, looking as proud as ever. He was wearing a tailored suit, his head freshly shaved, his hands were clasped together in front of him, and his expression was blank, bored. Even like this was all beneath him. It had been 2 weeks since the break-in, but my hands still curled into fists every time I saw his face. I sat in the front row, right behind the prosecutor's table. My lawyer, Sarah Cole, was sitting to my right. Reviewing notes on her tablet, she was calm. Too calm, like a predator waiting to strike. Greg's lawyer, a slick-looking guy named Andrew Bishop, stood and adjusted his tie. Your Honor, my client maintains that this was a confusion. Sarah snorted softly beside me. A misunderstanding. The prosecutor, a man named Daniel Rogers, stood and walked toward the jury. Breaking and entering, armed robbery, assault, extortion. All of that was a misunderstanding. Greg's lawyer smiled faintly. My client was acting within the authority granted by the Homeowner Association guidelines. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Interesting, because last time I checked, the Homeowner Association guidelines do not allow forced entry into a homeowner's home at 2 in the morning. Greg's lawyer's smile weakened. The rules are open to interpretation. Interpretation? Daniel laughed. Is that what you call pointing a crowbar at a man's head and demanding money? Greg's eyes hardened. But he said nothing. He sat back in his chair, calm and cold as ice. The prosecutor turned to the jury. Let me remind you, we have video footage of the defendants entering Mr. Carter's home. We have audio recordings of them discussing their plan to rob him, and we have the testimony of federal agents who witnessed the arrest. What kind of misunderstanding requires crowbars and guns? Greg's lawyer sat down, his mouth set in a thin line. Then Greg stood. His lawyer tried to stop him, but Greg brushed him off and stepped up to the microphone. I do not see what the big deal is, Greg said. His voice was steady, his gaze cold and measured. We were enforcing the rules. That is what Homeowner Association is supposed to do. The prosecutor's eyebrows lifted. Enforcing the rules by breaking into a man's house and demanding cash. Greg's lip lifted. He was non-compliant. We gave him warnings. And when he did not comply, Greg's eyes glinted. There are consequences. Daniel's smile tightened. Consequences like robbery and assault. Greg's jaw tensed. His eyes shifted toward me. He disrespected the Homeowner Association. My stomach turned. The sheer audacity in his voice made my skin crawl. Daniel leaned forward. And what gave you the authority to decide that? Greg smiled faintly. We make the rules. My hands curled in 2 fists. The arrogance, the entitlement. It made me want to get up and put my hands around his throat. Daniel stepped back, letting the quiet stretch. Greg stood there, his face carefully composed. But I could see the tension in his jaw. Nothing further, Daniel said, turning toward his table. Greg's lawyer stood up. We request that the charges be reduced. My client was following protocol and the situation escalated beyond his control. You are kidding me, I whispered under my breath. Sarah touched my arm. Let it play out. No, I murmured. I stood up. Your Honor, may I say something? Greg's lawyer looked annoyed, but the judge nodded. Mr. Carter, you may speak. I walked to the witness stand, standing only a few feet from Greg. I could feel his eyes on me, but I ignored him. I did not break any rules, I said. My voice was steady, but I could feel the anger boiling just beneath the surface. I paid my dues. I followed the guidelines, but that did not stop them from bothering me. It did not stop them from threatening me, and it did not stop them from breaking into my house in the middle of the night with weapons. Greg's lip lifted. You were warned. I turned toward him. My chest tightened. Warned? That is what you call it. Telling me to watch my back if I did not pay an extra $100 for an unauthorized mailbox. Not knock in on my door at all hours of the night. Leaving threatening notes in my mailbox. Greg's expression did not change. How much did you take from other homeowners? I asked. How many people were too scared to fight back? Greg did not answer. I took a step closer. Did you think I would be one of them? Greg's jaw tightened. You crossed the line, I said, my voice hard, and now you are going to suffer for it. Greg's eyes tightened. You think you have one? I smiled coldly. We will see. 2 days later, Sarah called me. They have been charged with armed robbery, extortion, conspiracy, and assault, she said. But Greg's lawyer is pushing for a settlement, a plea deal. My pulse raced. He is offering to serve 5 years in exchange for dropping some of the charges. 5 years. I snapped. That is not enough. Sarah breathed. Daniel is trying to push for more, but the homeowner association's lawyers are applying pressure. No, I said coldly. We are not letting him walk away. You want to go to trial? Yes. Sarah's smile hardened. Good. I was hoping you would say that. The trial resumed a week later. This time, Greg's composure started to slip. The prosecutor brought out the evidence, the audio recordings of Greg's voice ordering his men to take what they could find, the video footage showing Greg holding the crowbar as he ordered his men to break into my safe. Greg's lawyer tried to argue that the footage was incomplete, that it did not show the full context. The prosecutor smiled. What context justifies armed robbery? The jury's eyes darkened. Greg sat in his chair, his face pale. He leaned toward his lawyer, muttering furiously. His hands shook. I watched him closely. For the first time I saw it, the fear beneath the arrogance. He knew he was going to lose. The prosecutor stood in front of the jury. For his closing statement, these men believed they were above the law. They used their position of power to intimidate, extort, and steal from innocent people. But the law does apply to them, and it is time they face the punishment. Greg's jaw tightened. The jury left to deliberate. It did not take long. Guilty on all counts. Greg's shoulders dropped. He clenched his fists. The judge's voice was firm. Mr. Henshaw, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. Greg's head lifted. His eyes locked on me as the guards escorted him out. This is not over, he mouthed. I smiled coldly. Yes, it is. Greg Henshaw's face was pale as the verdict was read. Allowed guilty on all counts. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of the judge's gavel striking down 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. The prosecutor smiled slightly as Greg was led away by 2 federal agents. His hands were cuffed behind his back, his once arrogant posture now lowered into feet. I stood up slowly as Greg passed by. His eyes were sharp and cold as they met mine. Even with the handcuffs digging into his wrists, there was still a flicker of resistance in his gaze. This is not over, he hissed under his breath. I smiled faintly. Yes, it is. Greg's jaw tightened as the guards pulled him toward the exit. He resisted for a second, but the agents tightened their grip on his arms, pulling him through the side door. His lawyer, Andrew Bishop, sat frozen at the defense table, his face pale of color. My lawyer, Sarah Cole, touched my arm. It is done. I exhaled slowly, letting the tension release out of my chest. My hands were still trembling, but the weight that had been pressing me for weeks was finally gone. I watched as Greg disappeared through the side door, the heavy metal closing behind him with a final echoing clank. Sarah smiled. 25 years, no parole. He deserved more. Oh, I agree. Sarah's smile hardened. But this is good. This is very good. 2 days later, I was sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee when my phone vibrated. A known number. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello? This is Agent Walker from Homeland Security. My chest tightened. What is going on? Just wanted to give you an update. Your testimony helped us expose a much larger operation than we initially thought. What kind of operation? Walker's tone darkened. It turns out that Henshaw's Homeowner Association was not the only one involved. We have traced financial records and phone calls to homeowner association boards in at least 6 other states. Money laundering, racketeering, and organized extortion. All of it connected. My hand tightened around the coffee cup. Jesus. We have already made several more arrests, and thanks to the evidence you provided, Henshaw's testimony could help us break the entire network. Henshaw cooperating? Walker laughed. Not yet, but give it time. After a few months in federal prison, he will start talking. I exhaled slowly. So it is over for now. Walker's voice turned serious. But if you see anything suspicious, anything at all, you call me immediately. These guys do not like losing, and some of their associates might not be too happy about what you did. I will be ready, I said quietly. Walker paused for a moment. You did the right thing, Mr. Carter. Most people would have let this slide, but you stood your ground. Yeah, I said, my voice steady. I was not about to let them win. A week later, I got a letter from Homeland Security. Dear Mr. Carter, we are pleased to inform you that your assistance in the recent case involving the Homeowner Association has led to the takedown of a national criminal operation. Your testimony and the evidence you provided have been essential in securing multiple convictions on behalf of the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you for your courage and cooperation. I framed the letter and hung it next to my front door. Every time I walked past it, I felt a quiet sense of pride. 2 months later, I was working in my front yard when I saw a black SUV pull up across the street. My muscles tensed and my hand instinctively went toward my hip, where I was now legally carrying. But it was not Greg or anyone from the Homeowner Association. A man in a dark suit and sunglasses stepped out of the SUV. He had the look of someone used to being in charge. Sharp suit, perfect posture. Mr. Carter, who is asking? Agent Walker sent me. I eased slightly, but did not lower my guard. What is going on? The man's smile was faint. Greg Henshaw is talking. My stomach tightened, and he is revealing names. The agent slid a folder from his jacket and handed it to me. We are going to need you to testify again. I took the folder and flipped it open. Inside were pictures of several Homeowner Association board members. Names and addresses included. Looks like Greg was not the leader. The agent said he was taking orders from someone higher up. We think this goes all the way to the top. Who is at the top? The agent's smile disappeared. We are still working on that. I closed the folder. Let me know when you find out. The agent nodded. We will. He turned and walked back to the SUV. The door closed with a soft click and the vehicle pulled away. I stood there for a long time, the folder heavy in my hands. Greg Henshaw was going to stay in prison for the next 25 years. But the fact that someone higher up had been controlling things that made my skin crawl. This was not over. Not yet. I walked back toward the house, opened the front door, and glanced at the framed letter on the wall. Thank you for your bravery and cooperation. I smiled. Faintly. Yeah. Brave. I slid the folder onto the counter and poured myself a drink. My house was quiet now. No more strange knocks at the door. No more threatening letters. For the first time in months, I could finally relax. But as I stood there looking out the window at the empty street, I could not shake the feeling that something was coming. Greg Henshaw had talked, and now the real fight was about to begin.